Welcome, my fellow seekers of clarity, brothers walking the narrow path between temptation and truth. This space is for you. Let me ask you this. Have you ever wondered why some men, the ones who seem most grounded, most calm, quietly avoid certain women without explanation, while others fall in deep, fast, and never see the trap until it's too late? Most men think they're choosing, but in truth, they're being chosen, manipulated, drawn in by forces they don't understand, not because they're weak, but because they're unaware. Today, we'll uncover the hidden reason why Stoic men, those who master their desires, refuse to entertain certain women, not out of judgment, but out of wisdom, because there are energies that drain, games that bind, and emotional patterns that look like passion but feel like poison once you're in too deep. This video isn't just about attraction, it's about discernment, and it might just save you years of regret. If you're ready to lead your life, not be led by impulse, subscribe, like, and join us here on Stoic Love, where ancient insight becomes your shield in a modern battlefield of illusions. Now, let's begin with the first silent trait Stoic men recognize and most others ignore. Number 1. The unseen emotional drain. She doesn't scream or fight, she slowly drains your inner clarity and energy. It doesn't start with shouting or chaos or drama. It starts with small shifts, so subtle you almost miss them. You find yourself more tired after spending time with her, even if nothing dramatic happened. You second-guess your thoughts more often. Your mind feels full but not clear. You laugh, but something behind it feels off. You go to bed and your spirit feels heavier than your body. That's not chemistry. That's not love. That's not just how women are. That is the unseen emotional drain, the kind of weight most men mistake for connection when what they're really experiencing is a siphoning of energy. Because certain women don't explode, they leak. They slowly bleed emotional uncertainty into your world. Not with intention, but with presence. And most guys don't even know it's happening, because there's no big argument, no betrayal, no toxic red flag you can point to. But the Stoic man, the man who has practiced stillness, clarity, and internal order, feels it immediately. He notices when his peace no longer regenerates after time together. He catches the way her stories always center around chaos, how her conversations always subtly pull him into her emotional weather. She's not loud, she's not evil. She might even be kind, nurturing, loving in a way that looks beautiful from the outside, but on the inside, you feel unanchored. You lose your inner compass. You start questioning whether your standards are too high, whether your calm is the problem, whether maybe you're just too rigid. No, you're not. You're sensing the one thing most men never dare to admit. She's draining you without ever touching you. Marcus Aurelius said, "The soul becomes dyed with the color of its thoughts." And when you're around someone whose thoughts are soaked in emotional confusion, subtle guilt, and need for control, masked as connection, your soul slowly begins to shift. That's why the Stoic avoids her. Not because he fears her, not because he looks down on her, but because he knows. Even a fortress built with stone can be worn down by a persistent, unseen drip of water. It's not always the dramatic woman who destroys a man's clarity. It's the subtle one, the one who seems sweet but always needs saving. The one who never says you owe me but makes you feel like you do. The one whose very presence stirs guilt when you stand in your boundaries. She doesn't demand that you change. She simply reacts subtly emotionally every time you don't. And over time, if you're not careful, you will change. You'll become more reactive, more tired, less certain, less you. That's the trap. It's not that she takes from you, it's that you slowly stop choosing yourself in order to keep her emotionally regulated. And Stoic men don't play that game. They feel the moment their peace starts shrinking. They watch how their discipline bends in her presence. They notice when they're no longer operating from virtue, but from subtle obligation, fear of guilt, fear of disapproval, and they leave. Quietly, without need for drama, without needing her to understand, because the Stoic doesn't leave to punish her. He leaves to preserve himself, because he knows your peace is not a luxury, it's your edge, your compass, your power. The moment it becomes negotiable, you've already begun to lose who you are. And for what a woman who doesn't scream but silently chips away at your spirit, most men don't see it until it's too late, until they've lost the sharpness in their eyes, until they no longer recognize the man staring back in the mirror, but not you, because you've trained yourself to feel deeper than surface smiles, to sense shifts in your own spirit, to walk away not because you're weak, but because you're finally strong enough not to explain. She doesn't have to be cruel to destroy you. She just has to be disconnected from her own peace, and slowly she will pull you into that same storm, unless you step out. And you will, because you've already felt it, that quiet moment when her presence begins to cost more than it gives. And the Stoic man doesn't ignore that price. He simply refuses to pay it. Number 2, chaos mistaken for chemistry. Her instability excites you at first, but slowly dismantles your emotional center. It begins like a rush. You meet her and she's alive in a way most people aren't. Unpredictable, mysterious, electric. One minute she's laughing like a child, eyes glowing like you're the only man alive. The next, she disappears into silence without explanation, without rhythm, without warning. She kisses you like she can't live without you, then punishes you with absence for something you can't name. And still you chase, because it feels like fire, it feels like passion, it feels like something worth fighting for. But here's the Stoic truth most men never accept. What you're calling chemistry is often chaos. Her unpredictability doesn't make her more alive, it makes you more unstable. Her passion isn't depth, it's intensity masking inner disorder. And your attraction, it's not alignment, it's addiction to the highs and lows. Because when a woman doesn't know how to be calm in herself, she makes you mistake volatility for love. And you start adjusting to her storm like it's your new climate. You say things like, she's just emotional, she has a wild side, she's not like anyone I've ever met. No, she isn't, and that's the danger. See, the Stoic man knows. The most seductive feeling isn't pleasure, it's uncertainty. The part of your brain trained for survival lights up every time she pulls away and rewards you every time she comes back. It feels real, it feels romantic, but it's a loop, a chemical addiction dressed up as love. Epictetus once said, "When we are offended at any man's fault, turn to yourself and study your own failings. Then you will forget your anger." Now take that inward. When you feel addicted to her chaos, don't ask what's wrong with her. Ask, what part of me is entertained by being confused? What part of me feels alive only when I'm on edge? What childhood wound taught me that love has to hurt to be real? That's where the freedom begins. Because the Stoic man doesn't seek thrill, he seeks truth. He doesn't confuse emotional turbulence for emotional connection. He knows that the woman who stirs his nervous system might not be the woman who nourishes his soul. So he observes. He watches how she handles her emotions. Does she escalate tension or de-escalate it? Does she speak from centered clarity or weaponized feeling? Does she know how to sit in discomfort without creating more of it? If the answer is no, he doesn't punish her. He simply withdraws. Because he understands something most men avoid. The nervous system is not meant to live in a battlefield. It's meant to guide you to peace, to truth, to a woman whose presence steadies you, not shatters you. But that kind of woman is quiet, grounded, subtle. And if you've been trained by chaos, she won't excite you at first. Because you've been conditioned to believe that adrenaline means connection. And that's why you stay locked in emotional loops, with women who burn you slowly. The Stoic man rewires that pattern. He retrains his body to find calm as attractive. He replaces the hunger for highs and lows with the strength to stay centered. He feels the pull of the chaotic woman, but he doesn't follow it, because he knows chemistry without peace is poison. Yes, it thrills you. Yes, it lights you up, but then it hollows you out, bit by bit, until you no longer remember what silence felt like, what stillness felt like, what you felt like before her storms became your new normal. So he chooses differently, not because he's afraid of passion, but because he finally sees the cost of confusing it with self-destruction. The Stoic doesn't want more noise. He wants resonance. He wants peace so deep it activates the woman, not drains him. And if she brings storms instead of shelter, no matter how good the kiss feels, he lets her go. Because a man who governs his world refuses to surrender it to a woman who can't govern her own. Number 3, the validation loop trap. She gives affection in doses, then withholds it to keep you uncertain and attached. At first it feels magical. She lights up when she sees you. Her words pour like honey, her affection hits like sunlight after a storm. You feel chosen, special, like you've finally found a woman who gets you, but then without warning, it shifts. She pulls back. Less warmth, less words, less presence. She's distant now, colder, even calculating. And you can't help but ask yourself, what did I do wrong? So you try harder. More compliments, more effort. You step slightly out of yourself, reaching, bending, offering more than you would to anyone else. And that's when she returns, soft again, loving again, rewarding you for performing the version of yourself she wanted all along. This is not affection. It's not intimacy. It's conditioning. And it's one of the most invisible traps men fall into, especially those without a grounded center. What she's doing isn't evil. It may not even be intentional, but she has learned, consciously or not, that affection, when given in doses, becomes currency. She uses it to keep you uncertain. And uncertainty, when tied to hope, creates obsession. It's the same psychology behind slot machines. You never know when the reward is coming, so you keep pulling the lever. You keep showing up, hoping that this time she'll be consistent. But she won't. Not because she can't, but because your uncertainty is what makes you try harder. Marcus Aurelius once warned, "The opinion of 10,000 men is of no value if none of them know anything about the subject." Let that sink in. Just because someone rewards your behavior doesn't mean that behavior is aligned with your truth. It might only mean you've become easier to control. See, the Stoic man doesn't seek affection through performance. He knows that love, real love, is not earned through compliance. It's shared through mutual value, mutual awareness, mutual stillness. But in the validation loop, there is no stillness, only cycles. You behave. She gives love. You step out of line, speak a boundary, say, no, assert yourself, and she withdraws, and you feel the ache. Not because she's the right woman, but because you've become addicted to the way she withholds. It's not love you're chasing, it's relief. Relief from the absence she creates every time you don't perform. And here's the deeper wound it touches. That little boy inside you who once felt he had to earn love through being good, being agreeable, being impressive. She doesn't just play on your emotions, she plays on your conditioning, and that's what makes it so powerful and so dangerous. But the Stoic sees it. He recognizes when his behavior starts shifting, when his peace becomes dependent on how she feels that day. He watches the way his mind justifies staying even when his spirit grows smaller. And he stops, not to punish her, but to reclaim himself. Because a woman who offers connection only in return for control is not offering love. She's offering a leash. And the Stoic man doesn't wear one, not for pleasure, not for approval, not even for the illusion of love. Because he understands. If you have to become someone else to keep her close, you'll eventually lose the one person you were always meant to be, yourself. So he walks away, not when it's unbearable, but when it's subtle, when he notices the shift in his own integrity, the slow bend of his boundaries, the quiet erosion of his self-respect. He doesn't wait for a breakdown. He doesn't need a reason she'll accept. He simply knows. Any affection that comes with strings isn't love. It's manipulation, even if it's wrapped in a smile, even if it comes with warmth. So he unhooks, unchains, unchooses. Because the Stoic man doesn't measure love by how intensely it's given, but by how freely it flows. And when he feels the leash tighten, he doesn't bark, he breaks the collar. Number 4. Intimacy used as leverage. She offers closeness only when you're compliant, turning affection into control. You think it's connection. You think it's vulnerability. You think it's the moment she finally lets you in. That night when she wraps her body around yours, when her eyes soften and her voice drops into a whisper when she tells you, "I feel safe with you." But the next day, something shifts. She's distant again, colder, unreachable, not physically, but emotionally. You ask yourself, what changed? Was it something I said? Did I misstep? No, you didn't misstep. You just forgot a truth most men never see until it's too late. She wasn't giving you her heart. She was testing your submission. Because for some women, intimacy isn't a bridge, it's a bargaining chip. They've learned that their warmth can shape your behavior, that their closeness can be used to reward you when you're compliant and withheld when you're not. It's not love, it's not connection, it's leverage, pure and simple. She senses when your walls are down, when you've softened, when you're vulnerable. And in that moment, she offers herself not to meet you in that vulnerability, but to influence it. It's not that she's malicious, it's that she's learned through pain, through patterns that control keeps her safe. And closeness is her most effective tool. And here's what makes it insidious. It doesn't feel manipulative, it feels intimate, it feels tender. But over time, you'll begin to notice the pattern. She becomes affectionate right after you apologize, right after you agree, right after you let something slide, right after you give in. And the days you don't, she retreats, not in anger, in coldness, in silence. She creates emotional winter until you bend back toward the sun. This is the moment where most men collapse, because they mistake withdrawal for punishment, and they rush to earn back the warmth. They abandon their truth just to feel her softness again. But the Stoic man, he doesn't flinch, because he knows. Love that comes only when you're compliant is not love, it's control. And intimacy that disappears the moment you assert yourself was never intimacy to begin with. Epictetus said, "No man is free who is not master of himself." Let that echo, because mastery of self means this: you do not negotiate your truth for closeness. You do not sacrifice your boundaries for the illusion of unity. The Stoic man doesn't need intimacy if it costs him his spine. He doesn't need softness if it demands silence. He doesn't need warmth that melts away the moment he steps into his strength. And here's the paradox. When he stops reacting to her rhythm, when he refuses to chase her emotional seasons, when he stays centered through the cold, she either transforms or exits. But either way, he's free, because a man who lives in alignment does not fear her withdrawal. He recognizes it for what it is, a test, not of love but of leverage, and he does not yield to it, because he knows if you have to trade your masculinity for her closeness, if you have to dim your clarity to keep her softness, then what you're protecting isn't love, it's illusion. The Stoic man would rather sleep alone in peace than be embraced by someone who only offers love when it serves their agenda. And so he stays rooted, unmoving, unafraid. He doesn't force her to open, he doesn't demand affection. He simply remains fully himself, whether she melts or freezes. And in that grounded presence, he regains the one thing no manipulation can ever steal, his sovereignty. Because no man who is owned by another's emotional rhythms can ever fully own himself. Number 5. Boundary erosion disguised as love. She pushes your limits, gently making self-betrayal feel like devotion. It starts small. She asks you to stay a little longer when you had plans. She pouts when you say no, not dramatically, but just enough to make you feel guilty. She doesn't demand. She suggests. She doesn't shout. She withdraws ever so slightly. And you, wanting harmony, wanting to lead with strength and compassion, give in. Just this once, you say. Just to make her feel safe, just to keep the moment soft. But it doesn't stop there, because the next time she wants something, your time, your energy, your attention, and you hesitate, you'll feel that same look, that same subtle disappointment, that same energetic silence that presses in around your chest. And again you bend, not because she forced you, but because it's easier to say yes than to hold your no. What's happening here isn't abuse, it's erosion. She's not tearing down your boundaries with a bulldozer, she's melting them, making your resistance feel like abandonment, making your firmness feel like unkindness, making your self-respect feel like rejection of her. It's insidious. And if you're not deeply rooted in who you are, you'll confuse this slow death of your integrity for love. Because she tells you, you're the only one I can be this soft with. You understand me like no one else. You make me feel safe. But only when you agree. Only when you bend. Only when you sacrifice the small sacred parts of you to protect her emotions. Marcus Aurelius warned, if it is not right, do not do it. If it is not true, do not say it. The Stoic man takes this deeper. If it is not aligned, do not give it, even if it costs the moment, even if it disappoints her, even if it makes her pull away, because the cost of peace with her should never be war within yourself. But this is the trap most men fall into. They start shrinking, giving a little more each day, explaining themselves for things that once needed no defense, apologizing for simply having preferences, and all the while she praises them for being understanding, for being emotionally available, for being different from other men. But deep inside you feel it, that ache, that subtle gnawing resentment, not at her, at yourself, because a part of you knows you're not living from your core anymore. You're orbiting hers. And that's not love. That's captivity disguised as care. The Stoic man doesn't hate women like this. He doesn't blame them. He simply sees the pattern. He watches how her love language is compliance and how any attempt to reclaim himself feels like a betrayal to her. And instead of defending himself, he leaves the battlefield. Because love should never make you feel like you're losing yourself to keep someone else. He holds his no. He sets his time. He keeps his edge, not to dominate, but to honor. Because a man who lets himself be bent out of shape to keep the shape of her feelings intact will never be respected. Not by her, not by himself. She may not even realize she's doing it. She may truly believe she loves you. But her love is conditional, dependent on your surrender, your silence, your sacrifice. The Stoic man doesn't play that game. He doesn't fear loss, because he knows losing a woman who only loves the version of you she can control isn't a loss, it's a return to clarity, to strength, to self. He'd rather be alone in truth than embraced in a lie that costs him everything. Number 6. Wounded mirrors reflecting your past. She activates your unresolved pain and disguises it as a soulmate connection. You meet her and something inside you shifts. It's not just attraction, it's familiarity, like you've known her before, like she touches something deeper than lust. She finishes your sentences. She understands your shadows. She doesn't judge your mess. In fact, she seems to live in it with you. And that's what makes it feel so powerful. She sees the part of you that others overlook. She accepts the broken boy behind your calm face. She makes you feel seen. But here's the hidden danger most men ignore. It's not her you're falling for. It's the reflection of your wounds she unknowingly carries. Because when a woman is unhealed in the same ways you are, when her pain mirrors your own, you don't feel attraction, you feel recognition, not of the future, of the past. She brings back the emotional landscape you were raised in, the same tension, the same unpredictability, the same ache for validation you had as a child. And just like then, you try to earn the love. You try to soothe the chaos. You try to be enough. This is not a divine connection. This is an old trauma reenacted in high definition. But because it feels so intense, so real, so emotionally consuming, you confuse it for destiny. But the Stoic man knows better. As Epictetus taught, men are disturbed not by things, but by the views which they take of them. What you feel with her isn't truth. It's an emotional illusion filtered through the lens of your old pain. And if you don't catch it, you'll mistake this trauma bond for spiritual love. You'll say, "No one ever got me like she does," when really, she doesn't get you. She activates you. She triggers the parts of you you've yet to heal, and you mistake the ache for affection. You find yourself craving her chaos, because somewhere inside you were taught that love means surviving someone's storms. You find yourself forgiving things you shouldn't, because your inner child still hopes that maybe this time love won't leave. And the deeper you fall, the more distorted your judgment becomes. You start calling pain passion. You start calling instability depth. You start calling codependence loyalty. But the Stoic man has trained himself to pause, to witness the emotion without being consumed by it, to feel the echo of old wounds without making the woman in front of him responsible for filling them. He doesn't fall in love with what's familiar. He interrogates it. He asks, "Is this woman a vision of my future or a ghost from my past?" Because if she's only reflecting his unresolved trauma, no matter how intoxicating it feels, he knows the path leads nowhere. He doesn't try to fix her. He doesn't try to fix himself through her. He steps back and observes. Does this relationship help me evolve, or does it keep me repeating cycles I swore I had outgrown? That's the threshold. That's the wisdom most men miss, because it's easier to stay in something familiar, even when it hurts, than to confront the emptiness beneath it. But Stoic men don't settle for the comfort of suffering. They walk toward truth even when it feels less romantic, less magical, less addictive. They know that real connection doesn't feel like chaos. It feels like clarity. It doesn't activate your wounds, it heals them. So if a woman feels like home, ask yourself, what kind of home? One that built you, or one that broke you? Because love that mirrors your trauma may feel like fate, but only peace will feel like freedom. And the Stoic man will always choose freedom, even if it means walking away from the woman who once made him feel everything, because everything isn't always what you need. Number 7. The illusion of potential. You fall for who she might become, ignoring the damage she already causes. You see it in her eyes, the fire, the passion, the ambition. You hear it in her voice when she talks about healing, about growth, about dreams she hasn't chased yet. She tells you she's trying, that she's been through a lot, that she just needs someone who believes in her. And you believe, not just in her, but in the future version of her you've constructed in your mind. She's not there yet, but you see her, not for what she is, but for what she could be. And so you stay. You endure the emotional swings. You absorb the sharp words, the inconsistencies, the disrespect, because you tell yourself, she's just scared. She's growing. She's worth it. But the Stoic man knows potential is a story, not a standard. And if you're not careful, you will sacrifice your peace, your time, your identity on the altar of a fantasy. She's not who you imagine. She's who she is today. And today, she's hurting you. Today, she's crossing boundaries. Today, she's testing your center. But you don't walk away, because your mind is in love with the woman she might become, and your heart keeps writing chapters she hasn't earned. This is one of the deepest traps for high-conscious men who are aware, empathetic, and growth-oriented, because you're trained to look deeper, to hold space, to see the wounded girl under the defensive woman. But there's a line, and when that line blurs, you become not a partner but a project manager of her unrealized self. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "It is not death that a man should fear, but he should fear never beginning to live." The Stoic man lives in the present, not in imagined futures, not in emotional IOUs, not in the hope that someday she'll love you the way you love her. He asks one question: what is this relationship doing to me now? Not what it could do, not what it should do, what it is doing. If it's draining you, destabilizing you, or dulling the sharp edge of who you are, then no amount of potential justifies your staying, because you weren't put here to raise her into the woman she could be. You were put here to lead yourself into the man you already are. The truth is, most men don't fall in love with women. They fall in love with hope. Hope that she'll grow. Hope that she'll heal. Hope that you can be the one who inspires her to rise. But she won't rise because of you. She'll rise when she decides to. And if that day never comes, you'll be left trying to resuscitate a version of her that only existed in your imagination. That's not leadership. That's delusion. The Stoic man doesn't gamble with his spirit. He doesn't stay in relationships based on projected change. He pays attention to what is not, what could be. So he watches. Does she act on her growth, or does she only talk about it? Does she honor her values, or does she only aspire to them? Does she make choices that reflect evolution, or does she make excuses that justify dysfunction? And when the answer becomes clear, so does his decision. He doesn't beg, he doesn't fix, he doesn't wait for her to catch up to the woman she promised she'd become. He walks because he knows. Every day you stay with someone's potential, you abandon someone's reality, and that someone is you. He doesn't resent her. He doesn't hate her for not becoming. But he loves himself enough not to stay in the gap between what is and what never will be. Because the only woman truly worthy of a grounded man is the one who meets him now, not the one who keeps asking him to wait. Number 8. The Stoic man's quiet exit. He doesn't fight or fix. He simply recognizes the trap and walks away. There is no grand speech, no final plea, no dramatic confrontation, just stillness. The moment she expects reaction, he gives calm. The moment she pushes for proof, he offers silence. The moment she expects the cycle to continue, he steps out of it. Because the Stoic man doesn't leave in rage. He leaves in realization. He sees the trap for what it is, not always cruel, but always costly. He doesn't waste time explaining why. He's already explained through every moment he chose to stay longer than he should have. Every time he compromised his peace. Every time he traded truth for closeness. Every time he saw the pattern and hoped it would change. But now he's done hoping, not because he's given up, but because he's woken up. This is the moment most women never expect, because they've seen other men break, cry, beg, cling. But this man doesn't react. He ascends. He detaches not out of apathy, but from alignment. He understands a truth that took years to burn into his bones. You don't have to hate something to walk away from it. You just have to love yourself enough not to keep bleeding for it. And so he simply chooses peace. not as a performance, not as a way to punish, but because peace is the one thing he promised never to sacrifice again. She won't hear a door slam. She won't see a meltdown, just space, distance, and eventually emptiness. She might not realize it at first. She might think it's just another test, that he'll come back like all the others did, that the silence is a strategy, that the exit is a bluff. But days pass, weeks, and the air never shifts, because this isn't a pause. It's a departure. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "The tranquility that comes when you stop caring what they say, or think or do only what you do, that is the essence of the Stoic man's exit. He doesn't leave to hurt her. He leaves to stop hurting himself. And in doing so, he teaches without teaching. He mirrors without judgment. He walks not to abandon, but to preserve the version of himself he almost lost in her orbit, because he knows his value doesn't come from being understood. It comes from being whole. He doesn't need to be right. He doesn't need to be loved back. He doesn't need her to change. He just needs space to remain in his own truth. This is the most dangerous kind of man to lose. Not the one who shouts, but the one who stops speaking. Not the one who fights, but the one who no longer finds it worth it. Because when a Stoic man leaves, he doesn't take revenge. He takes his presence, and without it, the game ends. No more negotiations, no more one-sided effort, no more dancing around chaos disguised as connection. He just vanishes, like breath into winter air. And that silence, it will echo louder than any goodbye. Because when she finally looks for him again, not to play games but to reach for his stillness, he will already be gone. Not bitter, not broken, just free. Some lessons aren't learned in chaos, but in the silence you leave behind. Most men never realize they're in a trap. They confuse affection with depth, intensity, with love and hope, with proof. They keep giving not because she's asking, but because they're afraid of what happens when they stop. But you're not most men. You've seen behind the veil. You've watched how charm can hide control, how softness can seduce surrender, and how the wrong woman can mirror your wounds in the name of love. You've learned that not every connection deserves your peace, that not every woman who feels right is right, and most importantly, that your soul is not a battleground for someone else's healing. This is where Stoic men separate from the rest. They don't fight, they don't fix, they free themselves. Because to walk away quietly without resentment or noise is not weakness, it's mastery. If this message awakened something in you, a realization you've long buried, a strength you've nearly forgotten, then you already know. This isn't the end of something, it's the beginning of your return to yourself. For more truths that sharpen your edge and restore your center, subscribe to the channel. No noise, no chasing, just depth for men who've decided they won't lose themselves again. Welcome back.